Some people don't become a person first. They become a coping strategy. They learn how to stay useful, calm, quiet, easy, needed. Then one day, everyone calls that a personality. You might be the strong one, the low-maintenance one, the one who never asks for much, the one who can handle anything. And for a while, that sounds like a compliment, until you realize it may have cost you your real self. Because survival can look impressive from the outside. It can look mature, disciplined, and emotionally steady. But inside, it often feels very different. It feels like tension with good manners. It feels like being exhausted before the day even starts, like your body knows something your mouth still cannot say. You answer, "I'm good," before checking if it's true. You smile first, then search for the feeling later. You walk into a room and immediately read the mood, not because you're gifted, but because it once kept you safe. You know how to make yourself smaller. You know how to be easy to live with. You know how to sense what other people need. You just don't always know what you need until it's too late. That gap matters more than most people realize. It changes friendships, love, work, even rest. Because when survival becomes your personality, you don't just hide pain. You build a whole identity around preventing it. You become responsible before you become relaxed, helpful before honest. You learn that being liked is safer than being known, and that being needed is safer than needing. So adulthood can feel confusing in a very specific way. You look capable, but feel strangely unreachable to yourself. People trust you with everything, yet you still feel guilty asking for one simple thing. A ride home feels like too much. A favor feels expensive. Even comfort can feel like a debt. Even kindness can make your chest tighten. Because somewhere early on, your nervous system made a decision. My needs create problems, so I should need less. That decision may not have been spoken out loud. It could have lived in the air. In the long silence after you cried. In the parent who was physically there but emotionally elsewhere. In the household where one adult took up all the oxygen. In the family where your job was to not make things harder. Maybe no one called you dramatic. They just looked tired every time you had feelings. Maybe no one told you to grow up. You just noticed there wasn't room for you to stay little. So you adapted, quietly, intelligently, and far too early. You started tracking tone before words. You learned when the kitchen felt tense. You learned which footsteps meant peace and which meant trouble. You learned how to disappear without leaving the room. Some kids rebel to protect themselves. Others become pleasing, watchful, and eerily competent. They remember appointments, calm adults, manage siblings, and swallow reactions. Then everyone praises how mature they are. But maturity and self-erasure are not the same thing. They can wear the same clothes for years. A child who never bothers anyone is not always okay. Sometimes that child is simply understood the emotional price of existing. And that lesson does not stay in childhood. It follows them into adult love. It follows them into office meetings, late-night texts, messy friendships, and quiet apartments. It follows them into their own inner voice. That voice often sounds responsible on the surface, but underneath it is scared. It says, don't overreact, don't ask twice, don't be difficult, don't rest yet. It calls fear by more respectable names. It calls it discipline. It calls it independence. It calls it being realistic, being strong, being self-aware. But sometimes it is just old caution dressed like character. That is why these patterns are hard to notice. They have social value. People admire the person who never complains. Employers reward the one who always steps up. Families lean on the child who became the calm one. Partners often fall in love with the person who asks for almost nothing. But admiration can hide damage, especially when the damage is convenient for other people. The dependable one is often carrying a private loneliness. The peaceful one is often swallowing real anger. The self-sufficient one may secretly panic when they need support. The easy one may have no idea how much they have given away. This is where it gets painful. What helped you survive may now be what keeps you disconnected. You can be deeply loved and still feel unsafe being seen. You can want closeness and still brace against it. Someone asks what you feel, and your mind goes blank. Not because you have no feelings, but because you learn to interrupt them. A partner says, "Tell me what you need." You freeze like the question came in the wrong language. Your body may know first. Tight throat, hot face, heavy chest, sudden fatigue. But translating sensation into a request feels strangely impossible. By the time you find the words, the moment has passed. So you say, "It's fine." You say, "Don't worry about it." Then later, alone in the shower or driving home, the truth finally arrives. Not as clarity, but as grief. You realize you were hurt. You realize you wanted comfort. You realize you have spent years arriving late to your own emotions. That delay is not random. It often comes from growing up in places where immediate honesty was risky. When the room was unstable, speed belonged to survival, not reflection. You reacted fast to other people. You disconnected fast from yourself. That split can look very polished in adulthood. It can sound like, "I just don't like to be a burden." But underneath that sentence is often an old bargain. If I need less, maybe I can stay loved. That bargain affects rest too. Rest is hard when your worth was built on usefulness. You sit down, and guilt sits down with you. You try to relax, and your body starts scanning for unfinished tasks. Even joy can feel suspicious. Even a free afternoon can feel vaguely wrong. Because stillness leaves room for feelings, and feelings were never the safest place to be. So you stay busy. Not always because life demands it, but because motion keeps you from meeting what was buried. You answer emails at night. You carry everyone's mental load. You become the emergency contact of every relationship. Then you wonder why tenderness feels so unfamiliar. Sometimes, the strongest people are not strong in the way the world imagines. They are simply overtrained in enduring. They can survive discomfort, disappointment, and emotional hunger for a very long time. That is not the same as being well. This matters in relationships more than almost anywhere else, because intimacy asks for the very thing survival taught you to hide. It asks for messier truth. It asks for needs before resentment. It asks you to stay present while being cared for, and that can feel more exposing than doing everything alone. Some people can handle heartbreak better than tenderness. Tenderness reaches the younger part, the part that still expects warmth to disappear, the part that suspects every good thing has conditions. So when someone is patient with you, you may doubt them. When someone is consistent, you may wait for the shift. When someone offers help, you may say no too quickly, not because you don't want love, but because receiving it activates old fear. What if I owe them now? What if they see how much I actually need? What if I lean and they move? What if I finally stop bracing and that is the moment everything falls apart? These thoughts are rarely dramatic when they happen. They feel practical, even wise. That is how survival keeps its disguise. It doesn't always feel like panic. Sometimes it feels like standards. Sometimes it feels like self-control. Sometimes it feels like being the one who never has to depend on anybody. But total self-protection has a cost. It can make life look stable while love feels distant. It can make you admired while you feel emotionally unfed. And eventually something starts to ache. Not loudly at first. Maybe it shows up as numbness. Maybe as irritability that makes no sense. Maybe as crying over something small because it was never just that thing. Maybe as burnout that feels deeper than workload. Maybe you hit a season where being strong stops feeling noble. It just feels lonely. That moment is important. Not because it means you're broken, but because the strategy is finally showing its bill. The bill is missed joy. The bill is relationships shaped around your silence. The bill is not knowing your limits until your body forces them. The bill is being praised for a version of you that hurts to maintain. None of this means your younger self got it wrong. That child was brilliant. They read the room. They adapted with the tools they had. They found a way to stay connected, protected, and needed in an environment that may not have known how to hold them gently. That deserves respect. But respect is not the same as permanent loyalty. You can honor the strategy without living inside it forever. Because what kept you safe then may keep you lonely now. What made you lovable to others may make you inaccessible to yourself. Real growth often begins there. Not with dramatic reinvention, but with an honest sentence. Maybe I call survival maturity. Maybe I confuse self-abandonment with strength. Maybe the reason rest feels hard is not laziness, but history. Maybe the reason care feels strange is not weakness, but unfamiliarity. That kind of honesty is powerful because it is precise. It stops blaming your character for what your nervous system learned. It also stops romanticizing the wound. Being strong too early did not make you deeper than everyone else. It made you miss things. It made softness feel dangerous. It may have made you admired for handling what you should not have had to handle. There is pain in that truth. And there is relief in it too, Because if the pattern was learned, it can be noticed. If it can be noticed, it can be interrupted in small, real ways. Not perfectly, but consistently. That might look like answering slower when someone asks how you are. It might mean not saying, "I'm fine" on autopilot. It might mean letting a text sit while you check your own energy first. It might mean telling the truth in smaller pieces. Not your whole life story. Just one honest inch more than usual. It might mean saying, "Actually, I do need help," or "That hurt more than I expected." It might mean resting before you earn it, or noticing the shame that appears when you stop performing usefulness. These are small moments, but they are not small psychologically. They teach your system a new outcome. You can have needs and still be loved. You can be visible and still be safe. You can disappoint someone and still belong to yourself. You can stop overfunctioning and the world does not end. Slowly, a different identity begins to form, not built on impressing people with how little you require. Built on knowing when you're tired. Built on recognizing your own inner weather before the storm reaches everyone else. Built on the ability to receive without apologizing. Built on boundaries that do not need a guilty speech attached. Built on relationships where peace does not depend on your silence. Built on a life where care is not something you only give away. And maybe that is the deeper grief here. You were called strong for surviving conditions that should have been softened for you. You were praised for carrying weight that did not belong on your shoulders. Of course, that shaped you. Of course, it got into your posture, your voice, your habits, your love. Of course, it followed you into adulthood. But it is not all you are. It never was. Under the competence, there may be a tired person who wants to exhale. Under the calm, there may be anger that was never allowed language. Under the independence, there may be a very human longing to be met without earning it. That longing is not embarrassing. It is the part of you that never stopped telling the truth, even when the rest of you learned how to hide it. So if you have spent years being the safe one, the strong one, the one who never needed much, hear this clearly. That may be how you survived. But survival is not the most complete version of you. It is only the version that got you through. And maybe the next chapter is not about becoming someone new. Maybe it is about meeting the person underneath the adaptation. The one who has preferences, limits, tenderness, anger, hunger, and a right to take up emotional space. The one who was there before the performance became permanent. Because when survival becomes your personality, you can forget that you were ever more than a role, but you were. You were always more than useful, more than easy, more than calm in the middle of everyone else's storm. And the real turning point begins the moment you stop asking, "How can I be least difficult?" and start asking, "What is true for me right now?" That question can sound small. But for someone who learned to disappear in order to stay connected, it is a revolution. And sometimes, it is the first real sign that your life is finally becoming your own.